Today we're going to be talking about computers with multi-card configurations, but first, my name is Steve Smith, this is TQA Weekly, and is Sli and Crossfire necessary? Back in the day when the graphics cards weren't as powerful as the ones we have today, in order to have the maximum textures and the most frames per second that you could possibly get, especially in light of games like Crysis, you were going to need 2, 3, even 4 graphics cards cranked and overclocked in order to have the best experience, or at least an experience where the frames per second exceeded that of your computer monitor. And this is a niche problem. I have 2 graphics cards. I don't know anyone else that has graphics cards in my entourage. Many of you that do have it that listen to this probably have the same issue. There are a lot of people that have multi-card configurations. The thing is that by a lot, I mean not all that much compared to how many gamers out there use a single graphics card. This being an obvious problem from the beginning for both Sli and Crossfire in itself. The most important thing to developers is going to be the best gaming experience, aka the best way to generate the most amount of revenue so they can continue functioning, period. And it simply was not enough of a common occurrence for them to develop all the time for us. So what ends up happening is that for most people, video games generally had no issues whatsoever using a single graphics card because the developers coded for that. Unless Nvidia and AMD walked into these developer offices and helped them out make these games multi-card friendly, they generally weren't going to be supporting multiple graphics cards. One of the ways that they supported multiple graphics cards either way was an implicit setting that Nvidia allowed inside of their driver sets. Now, Nvidia decided to make changes to it quite a while ago. I'd say year and change. And what ended up happening is a few things. For one, 3-way and 4-way SLI are not really supported by Nvidia. They are, but they aren't. 2-way SLI is. The majority of people watching my show will have computers with processors with only 16 PCIe lanes, which means you can only get away with, on the Nvidia side, 2 graphics cards in SLI anywhere. Meaning that for you, on that specific basis, you weren't affected because you never could have more than 2 cards anyway. Then there's the other thing about the fact that the cost of these cards are exponentially higher. Then the fact that there are other things. If you watched last week's episode, you may have gotten my oversimplistic explanation of the 2 parts of the graphics card. Keep in mind, a graphics card itself is a computer, whereas the VRAM is where all the texture information is going to go, and the GPU is where the processing of everything actually occurs. When you add a second card, a third card, a fourth card, the thing is that CPU in your computer has to give the information to the VRAM of each of the graphics cards. So obviously there's that integration of an issue. Then there's also the fact that you need exactly the same information on each of these cards, and that each of these GPUs, although normally functioning correctly, they can introduce lag and desynchronize. And even if it's 1,000th of a millisecond, frames add up and you will eventually see lag. The more frames per second of lag that you have on the screen, the more you will notice there's something going on. And that actually leads to a diminishing return based on the number of graphics cards you have. Let's forget about the fact that these cards are expensive. The first card might be running at 100%, but the second, the third, and the fourth card are never going to be running at 100%. I run 2 cards during my streams, and the second card isn't never really more than 15-20% anyway. So the second card that you're paying for in full price is basically being paid 5 times over, way too much money for. So let's keep that one in mind. You're not really getting your money's worth out of the second's graphics card. Then the fact that you have to explicitly have the drivers for SLI programmed into the games now means that there are more and more developers, especially indie developers, that will never support SLI and probably Crossfire in their games because we are way too niche a market for them to actually support us in that kind of thing. Meaning that, at least at this point, multi-card configurations don't seem to be a very viable way of gaming anymore. And anyway, like I pointed out last week, you do have to keep in mind your monitor. Your monitor has a maximum amount of frames per second. And I'm sorry to point this out, but most current generation graphics cards in the gaming level, so 1060, 1070, 1080 and better, can support 4K gaming at 60 hertz per second, so 60 frames per second. And quite frankly, the majority of people are still playing on screens that are 1080p. So the cards themselves are just way too overpowered for what they're showing images on. And that means adding 2, 3, or 4 graphics card is no longer necessary. Your card will last you a fairly long time without having to be changed out. So, is Sli and Crossfire necessary anymore? Currently, they aren't, because the screens that the people are using are not big enough, or don't have enough resolution, and are not fast enough to warrant having more than one graphics card anymore. Like this episode if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, share with those that you think can benefit from this, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for topics, email me at ask@tqaweekly.com or go to my website, tqaweekly.com, for everything else. And if you want to make this show better, go to patreon.com/tqaweekly and become a patron today. Patrons get these episodes 24 to 40 hours in advance of everyone else. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.